behalf of Merck Partners, I'd like to say that we are truly delighted to be sponsors again this year of the Smurfit Business School's annual alumni event for the MBA programme. As a firm, our association with UCD goes back over 30 years, and nowhere is that connection stronger than is the case with the MBA programme. Without question, having close access to a quality MBA programme in a top-tier business school is a critical factor in ensuring that the next generation of leadership talent is being nurtured and is being developed, and we and our clients are very fortunate that the UCD MBA programme has served that need so fantastically well over the last 40 plus years.
An event like tonight, you're meeting people who've shared an experience, whether directly or indirectly, and you can tell a few war stories and listen to a few war stories. Some you've heard before, some new ones. But ultimately, it's great to meet people who've done and had an experience in different years and getting ideas and listening what people have done afterwards. I think that's very interesting. Having
just completed the MBA in May 2012, it's really given me the perspective in business and management that I really hadn't gained up to then. It would have taken me years to gain that insights into the various areas of business that it really brought it all together.
Hugely beneficial because it comes with a network of people who are able to help you in pretty much any situation, both at home and abroad.
The speakers you had today, fantastic. They're keeping me in touch with what's happening out there, and it's also nice to get in touch with old friends.
Great opportunity to interact, to meet people who are either on the MBA with myself or people who have graduated from the MBA, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
It's a great opportunity for alumni to get together, to connect, to reconnect, network, to meet the current students, and the current students value the network as a mentoring program.
It's the best way for me to do it, and that's what I'm doing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tara Collins, Director of Alumni Relations for UCD School of Business. It's wonderful to see you all here this evening. I want to thank our sponsors, Merck Partners, who are Ireland's leading executive resourcing firm, and they specialise in recruitment, assessment and development of senior business leaders. Our guest speaker tonight is Kingsley Aikens. Kingsley is former President and CEO of the Worldwide Ireland Funds and the American Ireland Fund. Kingsley worked for the Ireland Funds for 21 years, and during that time raised over $250 million for over 1,200 projects in Ireland, North and South. These projects were in the areas of peace and reconciliation, arts and culture, education and community development. Kingsley is a recognised authority on global diaspora, philanthropy and networking, and has written and spoken extensively on these topics. In 2008, he was awarded a Commander of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for fostering British-Irish relations. We will also hear tonight from Professor Kieran O'Hogarty, Dean of UCD School of Business, who will give you an update on the development of the school, and Orla Nugent, Director of the MBA Office, who will give you an update on the MBA Office. Will you please put your hands together for Kingsley Aikens?
Well, as Gay Byrne used to say, folly dat. Thank you, Tara, for those flourishing and flattering introduction. I don't think I've ever had quite an embarrassingly fawning introduction, which was pretty much exactly the same as the one I emailed over to you earlier today, so I do appreciate that. Look, it's fantastic to be here. Such a prestigious organisation, university, and I have a son who just started UCD this week, so I really kind of feel part of the place. And I was lying in bed with my wife this morning, and I was lying to her and she was lying to me. I think you understand the sort of situation. And I said, here I am tonight, I'm going to be speaking to the UCD alumni, the Smurfit School alumni, the MBA alumni. In your wildest dreams, could you ever have imagined me, little old me, doing something like that? And she kind of went silent for a moment, and then she said, honey, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're not in my wildest dreams. So I think it's kind of put me in my place. I spoke at something in Galway yesterday. There was an Irish executives group there, and this little lady came up after and said, that was terrific. She said, you're absolutely superfluous. So combating all of that, I asked Tara, what should I say tonight? And she said, well, be brief. So Tara, in conclusion, I'd just like to thank you. Congratulations to everybody being here. 6:15 is an extraordinary. I was amazed everybody was here right on time, because I always remember Sean Lamass, the former Taoiseach, once said, a lot of time has been wasted in Ireland by people showing up on time. And it's a lovely piece of logic to do with sort of Irish behaviour. But seriously, thank you so much for the invitation. And in a sense, this is it's a networking event. And I, with my partner, who I think Ed Kelly's had to go home to change for something else, have a company called Networking Matters, and I've been very involved. And the reason we got involved in this space, if you like, is because I realized at my exalted age and position and entering, as I call it, my third act, I reflected back on my life, and I realized the one thing, the piece of glue that, if you like, that helped me sort of zigzag through life and doing various things in various countries, and I worked in 6 different countries in my working life. The glue was networking. And I learned it from an old boss who was a graduate of UCD, and his name is Tony O'Reilly, and some of you may know that name. The O'Reilly Hall is as a result of his generosity to the university. But I watched him in action around the world, and I noticed a couple of things. When he was 19 years of age, he was picked to play for the British and Irish Lions in 1955 in South Africa. The first test, the score was 23-22 to the Lions. First time that century that the Lions had beaten South Africa in Ellis Park on the home ground of the Springboks. Jack van der Scheef missed a conversion straight in front in the last minute, and the Lions had won. O'Reilly went on to score 16 tries on that tour, and 4 years later, in 1959, he was selected for the Lions again. They went to New Zealand, and in the last minute of the last test, he took a pass on the blind side from his Irish scrum half, Andy Mulligan, scored in the corner, his 17th try, beating his own record. No player has ever scored more for the Lions than Tony O'Reilly. But what was interesting is that I watched his career evolve, and I worked for him for over 20 years. And I noticed something that I don't think many people have commented on. Tony O'Reilly only ever invested his own money, if you like, in countries where he played international rugby. So he invested in New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, England, Ireland. He worked, of course, as some of you may remember, the H.J. Heinz Company in Pittsburgh, was one of the leading executives in the food industry globally, was the highest paid executive in the United States. But when it came to investment, he fell back on his networks through rugby. And heading up his New Zealand operation was Wilson Winneray, captain of the 1961 All Blacks. On his South African boards, there were lots of rugby connections in England, etc. So I watched him do that. I was kind of curious. And he's an old Belvedere. He's a Belvedere boy. He went to Belvedere College. He didn't do a lot of study at school. He was a prodigiously talented sportsman. He was a great tennis player, a great pianist, quite a Corinthian figure. The headmaster called him in his final year in college, said, O'Reilly, if you don't knuckle down and do some study, you'll end up selling newspapers, which I thought was a really, really interesting sort of comment. But he used his networks and used them in lots of different ways. And I always remember when we were launching the Ireland Fund of South Africa, we used a guy called Johnny Robbie, who was a great rugby player for Ireland, who went out to South Africa, became really well known in media, became a real architect of the introduction of talkback radio in South Africa. And he was MC the night of this great dinner when Mandela came out to the stage, and he looked at O'Reilly. He said, O'Reilly, he said, I remember seeing you play rugby for Ireland before I went into Robben Island. And I was 27 years in Robben Island. And when I came out, you were still on the Irish rugby team. So I thought he nailed him pretty well. 1976, Tony O'Reilly got together with a guy called Dan Rooney. Dan Rooney owns the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's the current US ambassador in Ireland. And they had an idea. They had an idea to build up a network of people around the United States primarily who would have an interest in Ireland, might do something to help resolve the problems, the troubles in Northern Ireland. If you remember back in those days, many of you won't because you weren't born then. There was literally hundreds of people were dying annually in the conflict. And they said, could we do for Northern Ireland particularly, but for Ireland in general, what the Jewish community globally have done for Israel. And it was an unproven formula, but it was an interesting idea. It was modeled on the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal, who raised billions of dollars in the United States for Israel. And so we had a black tie fundraising dinner, you know the sort of formula. We do it in the Smurfit School, we do it in lots of organizations, but Waldorf Astoria, terrific event, fabulous evening, great occasion. Successful? No. We lost so much money that the only reason we had a second dinner a year later was to pay for the first dinner we had in 1976. But it was modeled, as I said, on the UJA. O'Reilly, who was a funny speaker, we had a slogan then, peace, culture, and charity, and decided to be successful, we're going to change it. Look Irish, dress British, think Yiddish. If you could figure out how to get all those three in orbit together, then you're onto something in winner. And I remember Dan Rooney's brother, Pat Rooney, who owns a dog track, or a racetrack down in Florida. And if any of you have been to Florida, there's an extraordinary microcosm of Florida called Palm Beach. And Palm Beach is where the really wealthy people go. They say in America, people go to live in Palm Beach when they're old and rich, and when they get there, they realize they're neither. So I think you got the sense of an extraordinary place. But I remember Pat Rooney taking me aside one night, and he said, where were you born? I said, I was born in Ireland. And he said, where were you educated? And I said, I was educated in Ireland. He said, you're an FBI. I said, what's an FBI? And an FBI said is a foreign-born Irishman. Real Irishmen are born in the Bronx. They're born in Chicago. They're born in Boston. And it was a great lesson, because what we were looking for in those days was not just the prominent Irish. We were looking for what we called DCPs, we used to call them. A DCP is a deep closet paddy. They're out there. They're in the undergrowth. Can we kind of pull them out? And over the years, we did. And it became a successful organization. So much so that 40,000 people a year go to the events, 39 cities, 13 countries. And back then, O'Reilly and Rooney called me in. They said, we want you to raise $100 million. And you got 5 years to do it. Go figure. Now, I was lucky because in Boston, I lived next door to the head of development for Harvard University. And Harvard University was set up in 1660 when an English clergyman called John Harvard donated his library to set up a college, and very soon it was the best university in the United States, and it probably still is, if not the best university in the United States, possibly the best university in the world, but certainly in the top 5 in the world, and always has been. And they are sensational at what they call development, which is kind of, Tara, a nice word for fundraising. They have 800 staff in fundraising, Harvard. They have $38 billion in the bank. And if you want to go to Harvard today, the fees are $55,000. Now, I have a son who just started UCD last week, and the fees were something like 2,000 something. It's just phenomenal, the difference. And the first thing everybody does, as soon as they leave Harvard, they start giving money back. So just go figure that mathematics. And it's an extraordinary, extraordinary formula. So I had this challenge of raising this 100 million. And what I basically did was copy the process that Harvard used. And I'm a founder member of a group called CASE, which stands for Copy and Steal Everything. Go figure who's doing something really well and see, can we change it, tweak it, do something similar. And we did. And we realized that we had to have a process to do this. And the process was all about 4 phases of developing relationships, which is about research and cultivation and solicitation and stewardship. And I also noticed, as I got involved in this kind of diaspora space, how other countries were doing this. And a country I was always fascinated, I was particularly fascinated by 2. One I alluded to earlier, which is Israel, another one, India. And I went to visit those countries. I wrote a report which was used for the Farmley conference that the Irish government introduced some time ago, because I noticed a couple of things. Firstly, Israel has 127 countries today on NASDAQ. In 1990, they had none. So what went on there? India has become this extraordinary global technology hub. China has become an incredible manufacturing base. And in Ireland's case, we also use this same thing to help bring about peace in Northern Ireland. And what I'm talking about is networking their diasporas. All those countries did it really, really well. And just the story I've told to some of you during the last week when I did some work with the Smurfit MBA, the Exec Ed, and the Innovation Academy was how we used our connections to help bring peace to Northern Ireland. So what we did was we used Tony O'Reilly, we used John Robbie, we used Professor O'Malley in UMass in Massachusetts, and we brought all the leaders from Northern Ireland to South Africa. We did this with a guy called Chuck Feeney. Chuck Feeney is an extraordinary Irish American who has decided to give away all his wealth. You might have read about him over the last few years. He did it very privately and quietly for many years. And I see Morris Foley here, and he will know all about what Chuck Feeney has done to create this extraordinary institution, Limerick University. But he's helped many universities, and Chuck Feeney's given over $1 billion to Irish universities. Extraordinary story. A man who grew and came up from very modest means, became very successful, and was a disciple of Andrew Carnegie, the great Scottish philanthropist. Our libraries in Ireland are built by a Presbyterian Scottish philanthropist called Carnegie. And Carnegie said in an essay he wrote in 1890, he said, "To die thus rich is to die disgraced." He believed in this concept of give while you live. And Feeney believes in the same thing and has encouraged many others, such as Warren Buffett, and Bill Gates and others, to sign on to this pledge. They calls it the Billionaire's Pledge in the United States. And Feeney has this wonderful concept. He's 84 now. He's figured out the date he's going to die. He wants to have given away all his money on that day. He has this concept. He said, "I want my check to the undertaker to bounce. You can just get your..." What a man, what an extraordinary contribution. But right back in 1997, we funded sending the leaders from Northern Ireland to South Africa to spend time with Nelson Mandela. In those times, as you can imagine, the leaders from Northern Ireland, that includes the leaders, the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister today, who went on this trip. They would not fly together. They would not take the transport up to Arniston military camp together, and they would not meet with Nelson Mandela together. We went to Mandela and said, "Look, we have a slight situation in Northern Ireland. You wouldn't be familiar with it. It's called apartheid. It's where the two societies are sort of equal but separate. And would you mind speaking to them individually?" And he agreed to do that. And he smiled and he did it. We used Cyril Ramaphosa, the head of the ANC, and Rolf Meyer, the head of the National Party, who had brought about that agreement in 1994 in South Africa, which is so historic. As always with an Irish event, there's something funny. The DUP party saw inside the quarters where the Shinners were staying, and they came and complained to us, the organisers, because the Shinners had a larger bar. And when we said to them, but you guys don't drink, they said, "That's not the point, they have a larger bar." 1 year later, the Good Friday Agreement was signed. And if you speak to those leaders today, or the other leaders like Jeffrey Donaldson and others who were there from Northern Ireland, they will all tell you it was that event, it was that occasion that broke the logjam that led to the agreement a year later. So it was about using networks, it was about using diaspora. And I've been fascinated by diaspora. In fact, 3 days ago I ran a seminar in the EU Parliament in Brussels because I want to get the EU interested in this topic. We brought over the State Department from the United States, we brought over the World Bank from Washington, brought over a load of people from here, we used the Irish MEPs, and we brought in representatives of all the countries around. Because what's happening now is countries are realizing there's such a thing as diaspora capital that can be accessed. And I mentioned Israel, and the way they've done it is quite remarkable. But India was a country that in the year 2002, there was total disregard between their diaspora and the Indian country. There was no real connection, certainly no programs, no policies. The Prime Minister then decided to hold a high-level international commission, and they wrote a massive report, and they started to change that and change it quite dramatically. There's 27 million people in the Indian diaspora. Their wealth equals 2/3 of the GDP of India, just 1.5 billion people in that number. Indians are highly educated. They are really smart people. 16,000 Indians got PhDs in the United States between 1985 and the year 2000, and they stayed in the United States, most of them. And what they did is went into business there and moved up through the C-suites of American business. 1 in 4 startups in Silicon Valley is an Indian. The largest business network in the world is called TIE, the Indus Entrepreneurs, is remarkable. And Forbes magazine recently gave the list of the 50 most powerful women in the world. Number 1, Angela Merkel. Number 2, Hillary Clinton. Number 3, Indra Nooyi. And people say, who the heck is Indra Nooyi? Indra Nooyi is 55 years of age. She was born in Madras. She went to Chennai High School. She did her technology and science degree in India. She worked for Johnson & Johnson, and then she moved to Yale and did a PhD, and then she joined BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, and then she joined a client The client was Pepsi. Indra Nooyi is the CEO of Pepsi in the United States. She's 300,000 employees, but her mother and father are in India, her brothers and sisters, her teachers, her friends are in India. She's head of the India-US Business Council, and she is driving investment back into India. And that's what's happening with diasporas. And we're seeing it now with Ireland. We're seeing it now with the business networks that are setting up. People like the IIBN, the Ireland Funds I mentioned, the Irish Technology Leadership Group on the West Coast. Last year we had the formation of the Wild Geese Scientists in Washington, 600 Irish scientists coming together. There's 400,000 European educated scientists living in the United States. So what's it all about? It's all about building networks. And in a way, you're doing that. And I was fortunate to have worked a lot with the State Department and their initiatives in this space and got to know a woman called Anne-Marie Slaughter. She's a professor in Princeton, but she took 3 years out at the request of Hillary Clinton to work in the US State Department. And she's written some great stuff. She says, the information age is over. All information is available for everybody at the click of a switch. It's not about content anymore, it's about context. Anybody can access information. She says we're now in the networked age. The old hierarchical, vertical types of organizations are being replaced by very horizontal, networked organizations. She said the last century was a century of billiard ball diplomacy and conflict, militarily, economically, countries bouncing off each other. Now the issues are global and the key is collaboration. She said it's not about countries, it's about regions. It's about creative clusters of connected people. She says Palo Alto has more in common with Bangalore, Shanghai, Tel Aviv, Dublin, Paris, London, than it does with Fresno, which is 2 hours up the road and is falling apart. And so it's that notion of having networks and building networks. And networks and networking is all about building social capital. And what is social capital? Well, social capital is the ability to find, to utilize and combine the skills, the experiences, the contacts of other people. So now in life we have human capital, and that's your own skill set and what you've got yourself. We've got financial capital, your assets, what you own, but you've got social capital. And social capital is increased by use. Financial and human capital is decreased by use. Social capital is about context and not content. Social capital is about between people, not within people. And my partner Ed and I, when we're giving these lectures and talks, we believe that's no longer sufficient to be able to compete on an individual competency basis. There's an awful lot of smart people around there. What matters now is your networks. And you need intense, tight, bonded networks, small groups of people. And you need to be able to bridge into all sorts of other groups. Because here's the conflict we live with today. The old escalator notion of careers where you join, work, move up, work along, move up, is gone. The escalator is jammed at every level. Companies show you no loyalty. You have to look at the startup of you as individuals. You have to build this social capital. Opportunities don't float on clouds, they are connected to people. But here's the challenge we face, twofold. One, we're all connected to literally thousands of people on our Blackberries and on our Apples, etc. I have a daughter with 800 friends on Facebook whom she's never met. We're kidding ourselves. There's a great book I mentioned to somebody tonight by Sherry Turkle, who's an MIT professor, who has said that the book is called Alone Together. We are connecting with huge numbers of people, but we're all alone in front of a screen. And we're starching the humanity out of our relationships, and we're failing to connect, converse, communicate, collaborate. And that's one of the challenges, because we have to have our smaller group of people, and it's worth reading the works of a guy called Professor Dunbar of Oxford University, who's professor of anthropology, who says in life at any one time you can only have 150 relationships. Up here hasn't changed in 25,000 years. Technologically changes nearly on a weekly basis. At the same time, you need to have the power of weak connections. You need to know lots of people weekly, so you can pick one out and take it and put it into your Dunbar number. That's the sort of challenge we have. And when I returned to live in Ireland some years ago, I got a call from a consulting company. He said, could you come in here and run a workshop on networking. I said, happy to do it, but you're one of the great companies of the world. You don't need me. You know it all. They said, no, we do, because we're left side of the brain people. We're a delivery company. We execute. We're fantastic at it. We're great, but we don't learn to build relationships. And when business was great, we didn't need it. But now we need it. And now we're scared about becoming generic. And this is why professional services companies, accounting and legal and others, need to develop this side of their skill set, the right side of their brain. And what's ironic is that companies have strategies for advertising, marketing, PR, communications, but they don't have strategies for networking. And I think that's one of the challenges. And I'm delighted to be doing work with the Smurfit MBA and the Exec Ed and the Innovation Academy, because I think they're realizing now this is something we tell all our people to do, but we don't show them. We don't instruct them. We don't help them. There's a sense that you're either a good networker or you're not. But we would argue that it is a learned experience. There is process. There's a way of doing it. So I congratulate you on what you're doing. I spoke at an event last week for the Innovation Academy with the Professor Westman from the United States. And I think I upset him because I said the definition of a university in the United States is sex for the students, parking for the staff, and football for the alumni. And I think that got me off to a really lousy start. But I think one of the things that we could all do is support our alma maters better than we've done. There's 110,000 foundations in the United States. And what the US has contributed to the world in this space are community foundations and the university alumni giving model. 110,000 foundations in the United States, 8,000 in the United Kingdom, 22 in Ireland. We do not have a developed philanthropic base. 3% of revenue for arts organisation comes from private giving in Ireland, 22% in the UK, 68% in the US. So that's a challenge that we all have, is actually to help with our colleges and universities if we want to keep them at the level that we hope they will remain at. Because the brutal reality of the world we now live in is that universities, healthcare, education and the arts will not be funded by central state governments anymore, anything like the way it was in the past. So I feel I've meandered on more than I should have. I thank you again, and thank you, Tara, for your invitation here. It would be invidious of me in any way to try and promote myself and my company as to what we do in terms of helping individual companies, etc. We're available for weddings, funerals, bar mitzvahs. We do whatever we like. But as I am a fan of networking, and particularly on the electronic side of LinkedIn, can I just ask you, anybody interested in learning more or connecting with you, please get on and ping me on LinkedIn. Thanks, have a great night.
Thank you, Kingsley, for that wonderfully inspiring speech. I'd like to introduce you now to Kieran O'Hogarty, who is the Dean of UCD School of Business.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you all very much for joining us this evening. They say when you're organising academic conferences that you shouldn't, you should place yourself after the weak speaker, so it makes you look good. Clearly, I didn't organise this evening, and I'm particularly pleased to be here. I'm the Dean of the Business School now for about a year, both the Smurfit and Quinn schools, and I must say it's been genuinely a huge privilege for me as Dean. I've enjoyed it immensely, and it's because of the relationships we have with people like yourselves and the continuing networking opportunities that we have here and the bonds of people that come together in this context. I'm a Galway man, and I was reminded when Kingsley was talking about, I think it was copy anything and steal everything, something like this, of Brian Cody's note about his leadership when he came in as coach of the Kilkenny hurling team. He said he would do it his own way, and he had a very good way of putting it. He said he would learn from everybody but copy nobody. And I think that if we were to have one approach to management or leadership that I've learned, say, over this year, I think that is a very good approach as a university, as a learning organisation, as people who learn and change over time. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's a great privilege to be in the position I'm in, is to work with people like yourselves and learn from you as we go through life. Just to talk about the school and how we're getting on, those of you who were here last year and have heard me speak earlier during this year know that we've been using this kind of prompt for the school that we're Ireland's global business school. It's not a brand or catchphrase or a tagline or anything like that, but just a way of thinking about ourselves and thinking about our own development. And the way we're thinking about that is that we're the only business school in Ireland which has the triple crown of accreditations. And you'd be glad to know that we retained our AMBA re-accreditation this year for another 5 years, and EQUIS a number of years ago for another 5 years. We're the only business school in Ireland whose programmes, including the MBA and in particular the MBA, are consistently ranked in the top 100 in the world. We're the only business school in Ireland that has such a high percentage of international students. Currently about 40% of our students are international, whether coming out of graduate programmes in Ireland or coming directly to us from abroad. We're a very international faculty in the sense that about 35% of our faculty are international faculty. And this year we're in a very good position in the sense, particularly in the overall context of the public service and universities generally, that we've recruited about 15 to 16 new faculty this year, and 8 of those are international. So we're very much building up that international profile of the school. And therefore I think we can claim to be a global business school. And part of our thinking is also that we're Ireland's global business school. In other words, that we're not separated from our locale, that we're very much drawing on the strengths of Ireland in order to build this international profile. And to, first of all, to bring in international students, but more importantly, I think, to create an international environment in the school so that all Irish companies, anybody working in Ireland and overseas, needs to work in an international context. To drive Irish economic growth, we need exports, and therefore we need an international perspective. So for the richness of the experience in the school, that international dimension is very important. And we've been thinking a little bit more about refining that idea about ourselves, that kind of prompt, over the last while. And really what we mean, because people have been saying, well, if Ireland's a little bit too local in the sense that if we're really, are we thinking about Ireland in bold and then the global business school? But I think really what we're thinking of is that we're connected. We're connected to the world through the students that we bring in here and through the connections that we have with our alumni like yourselves, with our corporate partners in North America, in Ireland and elsewhere. And we're connected to the world in the sense of being quite practical in our orientation, of knowing what's going on in the world itself, outside the walls, if you like. But we're also connected to our world. So one of the things, the richness of Dublin, the importance of Dublin is, and Ireland in general, is that we have some very intense clusters of industry here, whether it be in social media, in digital marketing, in financial services and pharma, that have really a worldwide reputation for having the headquarters of some of the leading international companies, the European and EMEA headquarters for some of the leading international companies in the world, based here in Dublin and in Ireland more generally. And part of our thinking is that we need to build on that strength, on those connections, that network, in order to really drive the school forward and drive the experience for our students in making us more and more relevant, not only in Ireland, but also internationally. And we'd like to think as well that we're connected to your world, so that when we organise events like this, there's a fantastic turnout this evening, that you come back to us and you ask of us what we can do for you to, it's beginning to sound like a former American president, but think about things that we can do for you to help you connect back with us and connect with each other. And in that sense, I think there's a French word called branché, which captures it, I think, better than connected does, in the sense of being plugged in and also being in some way with it, in the sense of being at the cusp of things. And I think that's where we'd like to see the school, with your help, is that we're a school that is Ireland's global business school, but what that means is that we're networked and connected to the world, connected to our world here in Dublin and in Ireland, but also connected to your world and relevant to you. We can't do this alone, we need your help, and on that basis I'm always very happy to get feedback from people, including our current students and our alumni, on how we might do better in that, trying to be more connected to the world, our world and your world. And part of that is the event this evening, because as an accountant, I wouldn't say I find it difficult, because I think I became an accountant. I'm back to how I was maybe as a younger person at this stage. But I think the idea of mingling is very important, and I always encourage students to be minglers rather than minglees. In other words, don't just stand and let things happen around you, but get out there and mix with other people and get to know people outside your ordinary circle, even here this evening. Because I think that's a very important part of what we do on the MBA Alumni Network, When we go to North America, for example, what I noticed around this time last year when we went for the alumni event there is that we had alumni who had actually gone to New York about 20 years ago and who are well settled there and who are in senior positions. And then we had alumni who'd gone more recently. And the opportunity for those two groups to meet and to potentially offer each other opportunities, I think is a very, very powerful opportunity that, again, as a business school, we are one of the only business schools in Ireland that offers that. And as a business school in Ireland, I think we're very good as Irish people at doing it. So I'd encourage you to be minglers rather than minglees. And I noticed this evening as well that we had quite a few people with MBA 13 and MBA 2014 on their lapels. And I thought two things. One, it's great to be optimistic, and we like that. But secondly, they're a group I think that could really, again, benefit from your help as alumni. We need your help, and again, they need your help in building their profile and in building the school in this network, this branché way that I think is very important for us. So, Gramil Mahagas Agvis Osok Tasugum Gwynich Tanavas. And I look forward to meeting you, most of you, if not all of you, this evening. I'm at Dean of Business at UCD.ie, much easier than Kieran.O'Hokerty. And if ever you need to meet me, give me feedback, call in for a lunch or a cup of coffee, feel free to do so. I'd like to think that that's part of our identity as a school, that we're very open and connected in that way. So, Gramil Mahagov, Wintanov Asaniha, Agus. And I mentioned Brian Cody. I will be going to the game on Sunday, so I'll also add Gali Vabu. Gramil Mahagov.
I'd like to welcome Orla Nugent, UCD Smurfit School's MBA Programme Director.
Good evening, everybody. As Tara said, my name is Orla Nugent and I'm the Director of the MBA Programmes in Smurfit. I only have a few words to say. First of all, I'd like to add my thanks to Kingsley Aikens for such a fantastic, thought-provoking speech this evening, and to Merck Partners for their continued support with our MBA alumni event, and to you for joining us this evening. It's great to see such a range of MBAs here. As you know, the MBA continually evolves, and we've recently become affinity members of the Stephen's Green Club, and Ray Mooney and Emma Ellis are here in the room this evening if anyone likes to find out some more about that. And we'd also like to take this opportunity to invite you to actually participate with us through either our clubs or our company projects. Our clubs cover sustainability, entrepreneurship, not-for-profit, sport, and thought leadership. So we'd really welcome the opportunity to hear from you and to discuss how you might participate with those clubs. And if you'd like to find out more, just contact myself or any of my colleagues. And my email is orla.nugent@ucd.ie. And finally, I'd like to wish you a fantastic evening and to actually extend thanks to Tara Collins for organising this evening. There's a lot of hard work that goes into this, so I'd like to give her a round of applause, please. So, thank you very much.
I'm not going to keep you much longer. Just want to say a few thank yous. I hope everyone's enjoying the evening. Just a quick thank you to the Conrad. I think they're looking after us very well this evening. Thank you to my colleagues in the alumni office, Maria and Joe, and also my colleagues in the MBA office, Orla and Brian, Michael, Avril, Gillian and Ricky and Roisin. And they've worked tirelessly to ensure that this event tonight is successful. And I really appreciate your hard work, dedication and support, so thank you very much. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Merck Partners. Tonight is about people. It's about our MBA alumni network. It's about our MBA students. It's about our colleagues, and it's about our corporate friends. It's about all of you. People make a difference, and all of you who have come along tonight have made tonight what it is. So please stay and enjoy yourselves. There's plenty more drinks and canapes coming out. We're going to have a jazz band, so I hope you enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.